Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, we've talked so much about the different lures that we use, and I think it's important because I've said this before. It's one thing to know that there's a lure out there that will catch fish. It's one thing to be able to buy that and tie it on your line and start fishing. But it's another thing to spend all the moments and weeks and months doing this very thing and come up with a new skill that we might not have had before. And I wanted to pass on to you one of the lures that has really sort of colored my fishing experiences through the years. And I think there's a real science and skill and essence to understanding what it is. And it's the simplest of all lures. And that's the bucktail jig. And you might think that maybe I talk too much about this, about the bucktail jig, because it's one of my favorites. But let me explain to you what I've discovered about the bucktail jig. and I say that because that's almost a misnomer, because these jigs can be made of fibers or hairs or feathers from a number of different sources. And the tail of a buck has a certain type of fiber to it that makes it react a certain way in water. But let me go back to the very beginning and explain what I have found through all the years. First of all, jigs can be tied to it with any color, any type of material, and any type of size. Basically, I feel that the sparser tied bucktail jigs that don't have as many hairs coming out of them, aren't as thick, I've always felt that they work better. And you wouldn't think they would. You'd think to have more substance would make the fish see it better, react better to it. But no, when you take a sparsely tied bucktail and then that material gets wet, it becomes almost stringy. You'd think, wow, what did the fish think with that? But that has worked better for me for every species of fish that I've tried to go after. Whether it was smallmouth and largemouth bass or northern pike or walleye, I've used bucktails for everything, even trout. The second thing that I feel is important is to decide which length the jig should be. It's no different than going and buying lures off the store walls and choosing a 3-inch lure instead of a 4-inch lure. You feel that 3-inch size is really important. And I think with bucktails, this is critical too. You want to use the length of the tail to represent mostly what you think those fish are going to go after. Then the third thing, and we talked about it before, is the type of material it's tied with. Marabou. Marabou has become so popular because really good fishermen feel that those fibers pulsate more in the water without you putting almost any motion or any input into it whatsoever. And let me finally, color. Color can be, as we know, with any lure, and we've debated this for so long, how important is color. And in bucktail jigs, I think it can become really important. But let me become now more specific. Years ago, probably 30 years ago, all of a sudden there was this movement in the St. Lawrence River near Kingston where people started using what they called carpet jigs, or it was the jigs were tied with an artificial material that looked kind of like bucktail, but you could get it much longer, and they were catching these great big northern pike in the St. Lawrence River on these long-tailed jigs. And I thought, oh my gosh, well, I don't have any of that material. So I thought, I wonder, horses' hairs on their tail and on their mane or whatever are so much longer than, let's say, bucktails are, deer tails. And so I had somebody tie up some horsehair jigs for me. And these jigs, honestly, they were 10 to 12, even 13 or 14 inches long. Sounds preposterous. And I thought, if they can catch these huge northern pike in the St. Lawrence River, maybe I can too. And I started using these horsehair jigs. And then I took them to the Grass River and started fishing for muskies with them. I caught the biggest muskies I've ever caught in my life. The biggest muskies. They hit these long horsehair jigs. But there's more to this story because the color became absolutely critical. And I found one farm or wherever that I got tails from a calf. Now, these were blonde colored, just as long. You think I could catch a fish with these? They were tied the same thickness, everything, the same length, and yet in the blonde colors, the white or cream or just these lighter colors, I couldn't catch the fish. I could not catch big fish with these jigs. So color became critical. But one other thing I can tell you, the biggest walleyes I've ever caught in my life were on these long horsehair jigs. I was doing a show one time, and I remember the cameraman with me, and I was wading along the shore in one of our little rivers, and all of a sudden I hook a fish, and I scream, "Muskie, muskie!" He gets the camera, he's got it rolling. I thought, oh my gosh, this is a monster muskie. And I got it almost to shore, and I looked down to be able to land it, and there was the head of a walleye on this fish. And I'm like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. It was the biggest walleye I've ever seen, and I ended up catching it. And I remember hoisting that up, and it was gigantic. And I had the biggest grin on my face, and I said to the audience, this is the greatest show I've ever done in my life. I've caught the monster of my dreams. And I let the walleye go back in, and this giant alligator-sized walleye swam slowly away. And I started fishing again, and I was thrilled. I'd done something that I'd tried for years to do. And I heard my cameraman up on the shore swearing to himself. I said, Mike, what's wrong? What's wrong? Come to find out, he hadn't turned the camera on. So this is all just this elaborate dream now I'm sharing with you because I have no proof that it happened. Bottom line, though, some of the biggest and most incredible fishing experiences that I've had in my life came with bucktail jigs. And if you give them a chance, if you learn how to use them, honest to goodness, the fish won't resist. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.